Welcome back, everyone, to 246 at the Master's Plan Christian Fellowship. We're glad to have you here. Tonight, we're going to be going through the biblical account of Noah. Now, I know that in recent days or months, there has been a release of a theatrical version of Noah that is far from the truth. So, we're only going to be highlighting a couple of moments in the biblical account. So, please make sure you read all of chapters Genesis 6 through 8 to get the full story. We're going to have a good time tonight. Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he indeed is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was just a man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. In the account of Noah, we see a truly depraved state of mankind. In verses 2 and 4, we see that fallen angels are having sexual relations with humans. And in verse 5, the Lord said that he saw man's heart and that it was continually wicked. Out of this wickedness, according to verse 13, is that the whole earth was filled with violence. I mean, this is a sad state of affairs for mankind at this time. To think what earth would be like if every person who was alive continually had wicked thoughts. Not one thought about God, not one thought about the Almighty Creator and how they came to being, but just the whole earth was filled with wicked men and wicked hearts. And out of that came extreme violence. You know, we live in an age currently that is really filled with depraved actions, but there's a remnant of God's restraining force. But at this time, at Noah's time, there seems to be no restraining force, and that mankind has hit an all-time low of its depravity. A sad state of affairs. But according to verse 8, out of the entire mankind, there was one that found favor with the Lord, and that was Noah. Noah is described to have walked with God, to have been a man of righteousness. I saw the movie Noah that recently was produced. And sadly, they defamed his character, portraying him as a man that didn't walk with God, as we see here in the scriptures. Now, out of all of this, it's important that we get to the next point, God's response to such atrocities that existed at this time. God's response to the state in which mankind had reached. It's important that we highlight this because we get to see the character of God in that, according to verse 6, that he was sorry that he made man. He was grieved. He was vexed. He felt very much the same type of heartache we could experience in everyday life. But he felt it on a whole nother level because of the creation that he made that we saw in Genesis 1 and 2 that was perfection and was allowed to stand in his holiness. We see by the sin of Adam that there's this progression to utter depravity. And to think that God never desired this moment that would then bring forth his judgment. And that leaves us in verse 7. Is not only did God have an emotional response, but he was going to have an actual physical one, which he was going to destroy all the creepy things, everything that was on the earth, and the remnant that was going to be saved was Noah and his family. Third point, Noah's response to God and his commandment to build the ark. Now, verses 6:14 to 21, you could read on your own. It's basically God's instruction to build the ark, and make sure to reference a good study Bible on just like what's going on there. Just get a good breakdown. And you can ask one of the pastors at the Master's Plan, and they could give you, some suggestions on study Bibles. But what we notice is that after, in verse 22, is that in 6:22 is that after God had instructed Noah to build the ark and how to build the ark, we read in verse 22, "Thus Noah did, according to all that God commanded him, so he did." It's interesting to think what it would be like at that time and hear that there was going to be rain, that there was going to be a flood when at this time they knew not of a flood. They knew not of rain. And to be spoken to by the Almighty and tell them that there's a flood coming and that you need to build a ship. You need to build an ark. Notice that the author of Genesis does not record Noah arguing with God. But if anything, he exemplifies in verse 22, "Thus Noah did, so he did." That in faith, Noah believed God, trusted in him, and did exactly what God commanded. So to recap, the biblical account of Noah that we saw tonight is that we saw that the state of mankind was utterly depraved, and in response to that depravity, God experienced emotion, heartbreak, and vexing in his spirit, and out of that came judgment. But throughout this whole thing out of this whole scenario that's playing out at the time of Noah is that although that mankind was utterly corrupt, that there was one that found favor in God's eyes. And when God commanded him to build the ark, Noah did. So now we're going to break off into groups and and take a look at the discussion questions. If you have any questions for me, feel free to email or post on the YouTube channel or the blog. See you next week.